The shadow by the trees wasn't attached to anything. I've never told this story to anyone. Not properly. Maybe dropped hints in drunk conversations or typed out a Reddit draft I never posted. But not like this. Not like how it really happened. I'm doing it now because, fuck it. Maybe if someone hears it, they'll understand why I don't sleep. Why I don't go outside after dark anymore. Why I haven't camped in 4 years. It was October. That weird in-between time when the leaves are just starting to turn and there's still warmth in the afternoons, but the nights bite. Cold enough to make you second-guess a thin sleeping bag. We picked Grand Teton, Wyoming, not one of those sanitized campgrounds with fire pits and park rangers handing out bear pamphlets. This was a real campsite, remote as hell, no cell signal. You had to hike 3 hours off a logging trail just to reach the clearing. My buddy Nate found it on some obscure backpacking forum. Undiscovered paradise, the post said. There were 4 of us, me, Nate, his girlfriend Lacey and her cousin Ben. All mid-20s, outdoorsy but not in the Instagram influencer kind of way. We had busted REI gear, banged up boots, a Yeti cooler full of cores, and enough jerky to feed a scout troop. It was supposed to be chill, one last big hike before winter shut everything down. The first night was fine. Beautiful, even. We pitched our Costco tents in a wide clearing surrounded by towering pines, the Tetons looming in the distance like jagged teeth. No other campers for miles. I remember thinking, this is the kind of quiet that makes you believe in God. We made a fire, roasted hot dogs, passed around a Bluetooth speaker playing Old Modest Mouse. Ben kept trying to get reception to check his fantasy football score, but gave up eventually and just lay on a log, staring up at the stars. We were laughing. A lot. It was good. Then, sometime past midnight, we started hearing things. It was faint, like someone crunching through leaves. We all froze, thinking bear immediately. But the sound didn't move like an animal. It was too slow, too deliberate. One step. Pause. Another. Pause. Probably a deer, Nate said, trying to sound confident. But I could tell he wasn't. We all clutched our headlamps like they were weapons. I flashed mine toward the trees and caught a glimpse, just a glimpse, of something ducking behind a trunk. Lacey whispered, "Did you see that?" I nodded. No one moved for a long time. The fire crackled. The forest didn't. Whatever it was, it didn't make another sound the rest of the night. We chalked it up to paranoia and turned in, but I kept my knife in my sleeping bag that night, just in case. The second night was worse. Nate found something that morning, right outside their tent. A cigarette butt, fresh, still smelled like smoke. None of us smoked, and it wasn't old. There was dew on the ground, but the butt was dry, like someone had been standing there, watching, after the dew had settled, watching them. We argued. Maybe it was from a past camper. Maybe some other hikers came through and we didn't notice. But deep down, we all knew that wasn't true. Ben laughed it off, said, "Whatever. Maybe Smokey the Bear took up Marlboros." But even he was rattled. His jokes were too loud, too forced. That day we didn't hike. We stayed close, gathered wood, kept the fire burning early. And when night fell, none of us said it. But we were all waiting for that sound again. That crunch. That pause. It came around 2 a.m, and this time there were 2 sets of footsteps. That's all I'll say for now. I didn't want to be the first one to say it, but I sat up the moment I heard them. Not one, but two. Definitely two. Sets of slow, dragging footsteps just outside the circle of our tents. I unzipped mine as quietly as I could. The air was razor cold. My breath came out in clouds. I could hear Nate in the next tent whispering, "You guys hear that?" And Ben, sounding way less cocky now, "That ain't no animal, man." I slid out with my flashlight and knife. Yeah, a knife. Like that was gonna help. I still don't know if I was more scared of what I'd see or what I wouldn't. The woods around us were pitch black beyond the glow of the fire, like standing in front of an open mouth. I flicked on my flashlight and scanned. The light hit tree trunks, dry leaves, a little mist curling off the ground, but nothing else. No people, no animals, just the sound, still moving, still circling us. Then came the laughter, not a chuckle, not even a full laugh, just a sharp, wet little sound like someone trying not to laugh through clenched teeth. It came from deeper in the woods, then a second one, off to the right. Closer. Lacey was crying in the tent. I could hear her muffled sobs and Nate trying to shush her, trying to keep her quiet. I wanted to run over and tell them to pack, to grab whatever they could and go, but I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, flashlight trembling in my hand, knife clutched like a goddamn souvenir. That's when Ben stepped out of his tent, barefoot, wearing just boxers and a hoodie. I said, "Ben, what the fuck are you doing?" He didn't answer, just looked at me with this blank, glassy stare. I swear to God, his eyes didn't even look alive. He started walking toward the trees. No hesitation, like he was in a trance. I ran and grabbed him. He jerked like I'd shocked him with a taser. "What the hell, man?" he snapped. "Let me go." "Are you insane? Where are you going?" I saw someone. There was a guy. He waved at me. I swear my blood turned to ice. I didn't see anyone. I asked him what the guy looked like. He said he couldn't remember. Just someone. In the trees, he waved and I felt like I knew him. We argued, loud enough that whatever was out there probably heard us. Eventually, Nate stepped out and joined me. We got Ben back into his tent, but he was shaking like he'd just come out of a cold shower. We zipped him in and took turns keeping watch the rest of the night. I sat by the fire with a headlamp on and my knife in my lap, and I didn't blink for hours. No more footsteps, no more laughter. But I know something was watching us. The next morning, we found something else. Ben's boots were gone. Just gone. Left right outside the tent where he'd taken them off. His socks were there. His camp stove was untouched. But the boots vanished. And there were footprints, bare footprints, leading into the woods, only one set. We packed. No questions. No argument. Nate didn't even try to play it cool. Lacey didn't speak at all. She just kept wiping her face like she couldn't stop crying, even though she wasn't actually crying anymore. We stuffed everything into our packs, crushed the fire, and started hiking back. 3 hours of silence, except for the constant sound of us checking over our shoulders. Even Ben, limping barefoot over dirt and rocks, didn't complain. But the forest wasn't done with us yet. About halfway back, the trail just stopped. Vanished. We'd followed this trail in 2 days ago. clear as day, marked with orange teas, even a little cairn someone had built. Now, nothing, like it had never been there. We circled, argued, cursed, checked phones, no service. Lacey tried the GPS app on her iPhone. It froze. Nate pulled out the printed map. It didn't make sense. The contours were wrong. We should have been going downhill, but we were climbing. We should have been near the creek. We couldn't even hear water anymore. We were lost. That's when we saw the figure, standing far off between two trees, motionless. No face, no movement, just a man-shaped outline in a parka and jeans. Ben was the first to scream. I blinked and it was gone. I swear to God it was gone, just vanished like fog. But we weren't imagining it. We couldn't be. That night we made camp again, not because we wanted to, but because it got dark fast and we were completely turned around. That's when we found the shoes, Ben's boots, sitting neatly side by side, just outside my tent, clean, dry, laces tied, but he hadn't seen them all day. And I knew, somehow, I knew that if we stayed another night, none of us would make it out of those woods alive. The only sound that night was the fire cracking like knuckles and the wind combing through the trees like something with long fingers. None of us slept. We didn't even pretend to. We sat there, backs to each other, facing outward like we were about to be ambushed. Because in a way, we were. Nobody spoke about the boots, not directly, but everyone saw them, perfectly positioned, laces looped, toes pointed toward the tent, like someone had left them there as a gift or a warning. Ben didn't touch them. He didn't even look at them. He sat cross-legged by the fire, wrapped in his hoodie, mumbling quietly to himself. I caught phrases here and there. Don't look at the trees, and it knows the shape of my face. At one point, he started humming a song, something familiar. Took me a minute to place it, You Are My Sunshine. But slower, off-key, like someone remembering it wrong. Nate tried to act like he was still in control, kept messing with the map, lighting it with his headlamp and turning it around like it was suddenly going to make sense if he just squinted hard enough. I saw his hands trembling. Lacey stayed in the tent, zipped up tight. I think she shut down completely. We didn't know it then, but her phone was still recording. I'll come back to that. Around 3:00 a.m., the fire died. We still had wood, but no one wanted to move. I think we all felt the same thing. If we step outside this circle, we're dead. Then we heard voices. Not just footsteps this time. Voices. Low and overlapping, like two people talking just out of earshot. Not quite whispers, but muffled, like hearing a conversation through a wall. You couldn't make out words, just tones, male and female, calm, even cheerful. Nate shined his flashlight toward the noise. Nothing. He stood up, light shaking in his hand. That's it, I'm done. We're hiking out. Right now. I don't care if we have to sleepwalk back to Jackson. I'm not going, Ben muttered. He's in the trees, he's wearing my skin. That stopped Nate cold. What the hell does that mean? I asked. Ben looked up, eyes glassy. When you see him again, just don't follow. He wants you to follow. The wind picked up then, like a cue. and something slammed against Nate's tent with a force that nearly knocked it over. Not a branch, not a gust. It sounded deliberate, like a body hitting canvas. Lacey screamed, finally came out, wild-eyed, clutching a Leatherman tool like a weapon. "What the fuck was that? What the fuck?" Nate bolted over and unzipped the flap. Nothing inside. No damage. Just a faint smell, like damp cloth and cigarette smoke. Then the laughing started again, this time closer, just beyond the firelight. It was wrong, like someone trying to mimic laughter without knowing how, like a recording played backward. We all stood. Instinct. Fear. I had my knife. Lacey had the Leatherman. Nate grabbed a thick branch from the pile. Ben just stood there, whispering to himself and swaying like he was on a boat. Then, in one horrifying second, the voices stopped, and something stepped into the firelight. It was me. I know how that sounds, but I swear it was me. Same jacket, same jeans, same scruffy beard, same Patagonia hat. I even had the scar over my left eyebrow, but the face wasn't right. It looked like me, but wrong, like it had studied a photo and stitched the features together with shaky hands. The eyes were too still, too focused, the smile too wide. There was no light behind it, no emotion, just a shell. It didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there on the edge of the clearing, grinning. Nate whispered, "That's not you." "No shit," I hissed. Ben screamed and ran into the woods. Lacey shouted after him, but he was already gone, barefoot again. That thing, my copy, watched him go, then turned its head toward us like a dog hearing a noise. We ran, no plan, no gear, just instinct. We bolted into the trees, away from the fire, away from the boots, away from whatever that thing was. Branches whipped our faces, rocks sliced our palms. I heard Lacey sobbing, Nate gasping. The only thing I remember thinking was keep running. Just keep running until the trees thin out or the sun comes up or we fall dead from exhaustion. I don't know how long we ran. But when we finally stopped, we realized we weren't alone. We'd run straight into someone else's camp. But it wasn't a normal camp. No tent. Just a tarp nailed between trees. A small pile of cigarette butts. A rusty hatchet embedded in a tree stump. And ropes. Lots of ropes. Some coiled, some frayed. Some tied into loops that looked an awful lot like nooses, and hanging from one of the trees, nailed through the trunk with a rusted railroad spike, was a Polaroid photo of me, taken from behind. I was standing at the edge of our original camp, staring into the woods. I had no memory of it being taken. Nate puked. Just dropped to his knees and let it all out into the dead pine needles. Lacey backed up until her back hit a tree and stayed there, covering her mouth like the photo had sucked the air out of her. I couldn't stop staring at it. The edges were curled, the image slightly faded. But it was me. My jacket, my stance, the awkward way I tilt my head when I'm trying to hear something. But what made my skin crawl wasn't that the picture was taken without me knowing. It was what was behind me in the photo. A shape, just beyond the trees, barely visible, like it had blended into the shadows. Long, thin, wrong, it looked like a man but taller, or maybe stretched. His arms went past his knees and his head. His head was cocked at the same angle as mine, like it was mimicking me. I tore it off the tree. "We have to leave," I said. I wasn't suggesting any more. I wasn't asking. "We leave now." But Nate was still on his knees, wheezing like he couldn't catch his breath. Lacey had gone quiet again, and when I looked at her face, I realized she wasn't looking at the photo. She was staring past me. "Lacey?" I asked, turning. It was Ben. He was standing at the edge of the clearing, except it wasn't really him. He had no shoes, his hoodie was soaked, dark with something that might have been water or blood. His eyes weren't blinking. He didn't even look like he was breathing. "Ben!" Nate called out, staggering up. I grabbed his arm. "Don't." "But he's right there. Don't." Ben didn't move, just watched us. Then, slowly, he lifted his hand and waved, exactly like he said the thing had done to him the night before. Then he smiled, and it wasn't Ben's smile. I know that sounds insane, but it wasn't. It was too wide, too stiff, like a puppet someone forgot how to animate. And when he took a step forward, it was like his body didn't fit his bones. Like he was wearing them, not owning them. We ran again. We didn't talk about directions or plans, we just moved. Deeper into the woods, away from the photo, away from whatever that was. After maybe half an hour, we reached a ravine we didn't recognize. The kind you don't find on a tourist trail, narrow, steep, with jagged rocks at the bottom and a half-rotted log acting as a crude bridge. Lacey refused. "I'm not crossing that," she said, shaking her head violently. "No fucking way, we'll find another path." "We don't have time," I said. "It's behind us." She froze. Her eyes went wide and I realized I'd never seen someone look that afraid before. Pure animal terror. "Did you see it?" "No," I said, "but I feel it." We crossed. Halfway across, Nate's foot slipped. The log lurched. Lacey screamed. I dropped to my knees and grabbed Nate's arm just before he went over. His flashlight fell. We watched it disappear into the blackness below. When we reached the other side, we didn't stop. We just kept moving until we found a rock overhang and crawled under it, curling into ourselves like children hiding from thunder. It was there under that overhang that Lacey finally spoke again. "My phone," she whispered. "It recorded last night." "What?" "I had it on for music. I forgot to turn it off when I got in the tent. It was still recording." She pulled it out, screen cracked, battery flashing red, opened her voice memos, scrolled to the file, hit play. For the first 30 seconds it was just campfire crackles and soft breathing. Then footsteps, slow, purposeful, crunching dead leaves. Then a voice, Ben's voice. "Come here," it said, in this low, coaxing tone. Another pause, then, "It's safe. You're safe now." But Ben had been asleep. I remember that. He never left the tent. Then the voice changed, same words but warped, like someone imitating Ben. "Come here. It's safe. You're safe now." Repeating, over and over, layered, distorted. Then came the sound that chilled me to my spine. Scraping, like nails on fabric. Then breathing, right up against the mic. Wet. Too slow. Then silence. We didn't finish the recording. The battery died. Not just drained, died, like the phone had short-circuited. Nate stood up. We keep going. At first light. No more stops, no more bullshit. If we hit a river, we follow it. If we hit a ridge, we climb it. But we don't stop. We agreed. None of us could sleep. Every noise felt like a warning. Every shadow looked like it was about to smile. And then, just before dawn, something happened I still can't explain. I saw myself again, standing across the ravine, smiling, holding the photo I'd torn off the tree. I didn't blink. I couldn't. I just stared across that ravine at myself. Same jacket, same busted knee from when I slipped, same torn pack strap over the shoulder. It even had my goddamn nervous twitch, tapping 2 fingers against the thigh. But the smile was wrong again. Like it didn't belong on my face. Like my muscles didn't want to make that shape. And it was holding the photo, the one I took off the tree. I don't know how. I had shoved it into my jacket pocket. I checked, trembling. It was still there. That thing. It was holding a copy. It never crossed the ravine, just turned slowly and walked back into the trees like it had never been there. But I swear, it didn't walk like a person. It flowed, like its feet weren't touching the ground. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just dropped down beside Nate and Lacey, shaking, heart pounding so hard I thought I was going to pass out. I didn't tell them. Not right then. I couldn't. I don't know why. Maybe because saying it out loud would make it real. When the first light cracked through the canopy, we moved. Stiff, silent, numb. We didn't pack anything. Just left everything. Bags, food, gear. All we took were knives, flashlights, and water bottles. The trees looked different in daylight. Colder, less alive. Like we were walking through a painting someone forgot to finish. The sky was colorless. No animals, not even insects. Just silence. Then the footprints started. First Nate saw them. Bare feet. Deep impressions in the soft mud between tree roots. Way too deep. Like whoever or whatever made them was heavy. And wrong, the toes were off, too long, like fingers. And there were no heel marks, just the front. They weren't walking, they were stalking. They followed us. Never ahead, always behind. No matter how far we went, new ones would appear every 100 yards or so. Lacey broke around noon. She dropped to her knees and started sobbing uncontrollably. "I can't do this," she cried. "I can't. I don't know where we're going. I don't want to die in these woods. I want to go home. Please, I just want to go home." Nate knelt beside her, whispering something I couldn't hear. I just stood watch. Every second we stayed still felt like an invitation, like whatever was out there was getting closer. Then we heard whistling, just a few notes, soft, childlike. "You are my sunshine," exactly like Ben had hummed it, but different. I spun, flashlight up, but blade out. Nothing. Just trees, but Lacey screamed. I turned and she was gone. One blink, 1 second, one scream, gone. Nate shouted her name, running after the sound. I followed. We found her maybe 30 feet away, standing in front of a tree, not moving, breathing hard. She didn't respond to us at first, just stared. It was another photo, nailed into the bark. This time it was Nate, taken from above, like from a tree branch. He was sleeping, sprawled in his tent bag, mouth open. You could see the shape of someone standing just outside the tent in the background, half visible, blurred, but the outline was unmistakable. Nate ripped the photo down and tore it to shreds, screaming. I watched Lacey. She wasn't blinking. She whispered, "It's copying us." We ran again. No direction, no plan, just pure panic. Branches whipped us raw, my throat burned, my legs barely worked. But we didn't stop until we stumbled into something we hadn't seen in 3 days. A fire ring, stone-lined, ash-filled, blackened logs, a campsite, but not ours. There were 3 tents, all collapsed, torn. The fabric was slashed, not weather-worn. One of the tents had dried blood around the zipper. The Yeti cooler nearby was melted on one side like it had been hit with a blowtorch. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the journal. I found it under a pile of leaves near the burned fire pit. Half-soaked, mold eating through the edges. First few pages were normal. Notes, trail entries, meals, dates, jokes, like any hiking group would write. Then, "Something's out here. Woke up to laughing last night. Sounds like Megan. Megan hasn't spoken since Monday. Phil's boots are gone. Found them 30 feet from camp, perfectly placed. Jake saw himself today. He smiled." Then one line scratched deep into the paper. "It copies what it loves." I dropped the journal. Nate picked it up, read it, didn't speak for a full minute. Then he just muttered, "It's gonna wear us." That night we didn't sleep. We found a hollow under a ridge, piled up rocks around us, took turns on watch. Every few minutes we'd shine flashlights into the trees and see movement, always just past the edge, just where the light didn't reach. I swear I saw my dad at one point, just a glimpse, but I'd know that silhouette anywhere. My dad's been dead for 6 years. It stared at me, and then it waved. And I waved back. Because in that moment, I didn't feel scared. I shouldn't have waved. I knew it the second my fingers lifted. It was like handing something a key, inviting it in. The silhouette of my father lowered his arm and tilted his head, just like me. Same twitch, same posture. It mimicked everything perfectly. Then it slowly stepped back into the trees, vanishing without a sound. I didn't tell Nate or Lacey. I just sat there, hugging my knees, heart thudding so hard I felt it in my teeth. By morning, Lacey was gone. No sound, no struggle, just gone. No blood, no footprints. Her sleeping bag was zipped up from the outside, like someone tucked her in. Nate lost it, punched a tree until his knuckles split, screamed until his voice cracked, and then he just sat down, head in his hands, and whispered, "It's picking us off." He wasn't wrong. The last time we saw the sun was that day. The light never came back the same way. It felt dimmer, like the trees were closing in, the sky folding tighter, like the forest didn't want to let us out. By nightfall, we weren't even pretending anymore. We huddled together, back to back, blades out, lights weak and flickering. I remember counting my breaths, trying to focus, trying to anchor myself. That's when Nate stood up and said, I'm gonna check the ridge. Maybe there's a trail. Stay here. I should have stopped him. I knew it wasn't him the second he spoke. His voice was too calm, too even, and he didn't take a flashlight. He didn't say my name. The real Nate always said my name. I let him go. 5 minutes later, he came back. Same jacket, same torn sleeve, but the scratch on his cheek was gone. His limp was gone, and his left hand, the one he busted punching that tree, wasn't swollen anymore. He sat down beside me, didn't say a word, just smiled. I didn't move. I didn't breathe, because deep down I knew whatever that was, it wasn't Nate. That night I heard things, my own voice calling out from the woods, whimpering, pleading, "Help, please help me." Then laughter, close, all around me like a circle tightening, footsteps crunching leaves in sync with my heartbeat. I didn't run. Running didn't matter anymore. I just stared at the fire until it burned itself into my retinas, until the trees were full of faces that looked like mine, Nate's, Lacey's, Ben's, all watching, all mimicking, all waiting. The last thing I remember before I passed out from exhaustion was one of them crouching just beyond the light, still, silent, smiling. They found me 2 days later. Hikers. Real ones. On a trail I swear didn't exist before. I was dehydrated, starving, covered in scratches and bruises. I couldn't speak for 3 days. Couldn't say what happened. Couldn't describe what I saw. Ben, Nate, Lacey, they never found their bodies. Only their boots, placed in perfect pairs, toes pointed toward the trailhead. Sometimes when it's dark and quiet and I close my eyes, I can still hear them. Footsteps outside the window. A voice that sounds exactly like mine whispering from the hallway. A knock on the door when no one should be home. I don't camp anymore. I don't hike. And I never, ever wave back. Because whatever's out there, it remembers me too. We dug up something that should have stayed buried. I wasn't even supposed to be on that trip. It was my buddy Caleb's idea. He'd scored a free weekend permit for a remote spot in the Northern Cascades, just south of Mount Baker. The plan was basic. 4 of us, 2 tents, 3 days off-grid. No phones, no emails, just booze, bonfire, and bullshit. I went mostly to get away from my ex, but I swear to God if I could go back, I'd fake the flu, break my leg, do anything to avoid what happened out there. We set up camp by a glacial creek, no other souls in sight for miles. The sky bled orange that first evening as we cracked open the Yeti cooler full of cores and snacked on trail mix and jerky from Costco. You could still hear the drone of insects and the soft gurgle of water. It was peaceful, real peaceful, too peaceful. The first weird thing happened at around midnight. We were telling stories around the fire when Logan, he's our designated goofball, froze mid-sentence and whispered, "Did you hear that?" We all shut up instantly. The fire popped. The wind rustled the trees, then, clear as day, came this dry, crunching sound, like someone stepping on pine needles. Slow, careful steps. Not an animal. Too deliberate. Too human. "Probably just a deer," Caleb said. "No deer walks in a straight fucking line like that," I muttered. We held our breath, watching the tree line. Then it stopped. Complete silence. Eventually, we laughed it off. Someone, maybe it was Eric, joked about Bigfoot. We turned in, zipped up our tents, and I tried not to dwell on it. The next morning, one of our camp chairs was missing. We all assumed Logan had dragged it off drunk and passed out on it somewhere stupid. We searched around, nothing. No chair, no tracks, not even a drag mark. It was just gone, like it had never existed. We tried to brush it off, but we were rattled. We didn't talk about it, not really. We just sort of knew something was wrong. Later that day, when I was filling our water jugs from the creek, I looked up and saw someone standing about 200 feet upstream. A guy, just standing there, watching me. He had a flannel shirt, big beard, and a ratty backpack. Too far to make out his face, but close enough to feel him watching. I called out, "Hey, you good?" He didn't respond, didn't move. I blinked, and he was gone. I'm not crazy. I know what I saw. When I told the others, they laughed, but their eyes didn't. Especially not Caleb's. He just looked down at the firewood he was chopping and said, "A lot of weird folks live out this way. Some real off-grid types." That night, we started locking our tent zippers with cheap TSA locks we'd brought for our gear. And still, we barely slept. Because around 3 a.m., Logan sat bolt upright in our tent and hissed, "I swear someone just whispered my name." He was shaking, like actually trembling. I told him to chill, but I felt it too. This heavy feeling, like we weren't alone. And the air, it had that sharp smell, like wet metal, blood. It only got worse from there. The morning after Logan said he heard someone whisper his name, we all pretended everything was normal. We didn't say a goddamn word about it. Nobody brought up the chair, the guy at the creek, or that cold breath of fear that had crept through our tents like smoke. Caleb cooked scrambled eggs on the little camp stove while Eric stirred oatmeal, and we all sat around like good little campers, pretending we weren't fucking spooked out of our skulls. But we were. You could see it in the way Logan kept glancing over his shoulder, or how Caleb, who was usually Mr. Calm and cocky, kept gripping his axe handle like it owed him money. Even I found myself staring out into the trees a little too long, expecting to see a flannel shirt moving between the pines. Around noon, Caleb suggested we go hiking. "Get out of camp for a bit," he said. I think we were all eager for a distraction, so we packed some water, threw on our boots, and followed one of the unmarked trails he'd mapped on Gaia. The forest got denser the higher we climbed, the ground softer with moss, air thinner. It was beautiful, in that quiet, untouched way, but also wrong. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was empty. Like even the birds didn't want to make noise here. 2 hours in, we found something. It was just off trail, a few feet into the brush. A ring of rocks, like a primitive fire pit, but filled with charred bones. Small ones. And not animal small, child small. "What the fuck?" Eric muttered, stepping back. "Could be from a hunting camp," Caleb offered, voice too tight to believe himself. "Maybe a dog." "That's not a goddamn dog," Logan said, pointing to a tiny jawbone half buried in ash. "Dogs don't have molars like that." We didn't talk much after that. We decided to loop back, cutting downhill along the ridge. That's when we saw the second thing, another campsite. This one old, abandoned, ripped tents, broken gear, half buried in moss like nature had tried to erase it. But the weirdest part, there was a shovel, rusted and half stuck in the dirt next to a mound. A mound that looked fresh. That's when Caleb said it. Someone buried something here. Logan was already backing up. Dude, no, let's not. Let's just not. But Eric, stupid, fearless Eric, grabbed the shovel and started digging. I told him to stop. We all did. But he kept going. It wasn't deep. Maybe 2 feet down, the dirt started to stink. Like wet rot and something else. Something chemical. When the shovel hit wood, we all froze. Eric looked at us, breathing hard. Then he dug the rest out with his hands, brushing away dirt like a kid unwrapping a Christmas present. It was a box. Homemade. Nailed shut, with this weird burnt symbol carved into the top. Not a cross. Not a pentagram. Just a shape that looked like a deformed eye with spikes around it. Eric pried it open. Inside were photos. Old Polaroids, sealed in plastic. Dozens of them. All of kids. Tied up. Some crying. Some bleeding. One with duct tape over his mouth. Lying on a blue tarp. None of us said a word. Not until Caleb reached in and pulled out a photo that made the blood drain from his face. That's the trailhead, he said, right where we parked the car. The photo showed a kid sitting on the hood of a Subaru. The background? The same sign we passed on the way in. Someone had taken that picture, from right where we were standing 2 days ago. We buried the box. Fast, no discussion. Covered it like it never existed. Caleb told Eric to wipe the shovel down. Logan kicked leaves over our boot prints. None of us spoke on the hike back. But when we got to camp, things were different. For one, all our tents were unzipped. We always zipped them. Always. 2, our cooler was flipped. All the beer gone. Food scattered. Like someone had come through and looked through everything. Not to take, just to inspect. And then we saw the note. It was folded, left on Caleb's sleeping bag. Just 2 words, scrawled in shaky block letters. Dig deeper. We didn't sleep that night. Not even a wink. Not after the note. Not after those words, dig deeper, kept bouncing around our heads like echoes in a tomb. Caleb burned the note. Just pulled out his Zippo and set it on fire without saying anything. We all just stood there, watching it shrivel and curl into black flakes. No one argued. No one said a goddamn word. We built the fire high that night. Higher than we ever had. Like maybe light could scare off whatever the hell was watching us. Because we were being watched. We could feel it. You know that skin prickling back of the neck itch you get when someone's staring at you from the dark? Multiply that by 100. That's what it felt like. All night. Constant. Logan started muttering to himself. I didn't catch most of it, but he kept repeating one phrase. This was a trap. This was a fucking trap. I couldn't argue with him. At some point, I went to take a piss and nearly stepped on it. A shoe. Just one. Kid-sized. Waterlogged. Sitting in the middle of the trail leading out of camp. I picked it up without thinking, then realized the tongue had writing on it. I turned it over, heart slamming. Written in what looked like red Sharpie were 3 words. Do you see? I tossed it into the fire. Instinct. Just pure panic. And then the laughter started. It was far off, but close enough to hear. A dry, raspy kind of laugh. Like someone who hadn't used their voice in years, like it hurt them to do it. It echoed through the trees, long and slow, and I swear it mocked us. Like it was enjoying the show. Eric grabbed the axe, Caleb grabbed the shovel. Logan just grabbed his sleeping bag and said he was sleeping in the car. He didn't care if it meant a 4-hour hike in the dark. But when we pulled out the map and the GPS, we realized something. The trail, it didn't match anymore. The switchbacks were gone. The river was flowing wrong. Even the terrain was off. What should have been a rocky slope was now dense forest. We were lost. And here's the thing. Caleb never gets lost. He does solo climbs, backcountry hikes in Alaska, owns 2 Garmins, 3 compasses, and probably dreams in topography. But we were lost. Eric blamed the altitude. Logan said we were drugged. I didn't say anything, because I remembered something I'd read once in a Reddit thread about missing hikers. They don't vanish, they're taken. Places like that don't let you leave if they don't want you to. That night, we set up a perimeter with fire, piled logs in a ring, kept it burning, took shifts. Caleb and I stayed up first. Around 2 a.m. we saw them. Lights, flashlights, maybe 5 or 6 of them, moving through the woods. But not like hikers. No talking. No beams scanning the path, just slow, steady movements, like they knew exactly where we were. They stopped about 30 yards away, no sound, just hovering in the trees. I whispered, maybe it's search and rescue. Caleb just shook his head. Sayar don't stalk. They shout. They use megaphones. These people aren't looking to help. We woke the others, sat in silence, watching. Then, one by one, the lights blinked out. Not all at once, not fast, just gone. And the forest was silent again, until we heard the tent unzip. It was Logan's. We all turned. He was gone. Gone. We checked the whole site, no tracks, no screams, just an open flap and his goddamn sleeping bag still inside. Caleb wanted to go looking. Eric said no way, this was a trap. I just stood there, staring at the dark trees, too frozen to think. That's when we heard it. Not Logan's voice, his crying, low, pitiful sobs coming from somewhere deep in the woods. Somewhere wrong. Caleb took 2 steps toward it before Eric tackled him. They wrestled in the dirt until I screamed for them to stop. The sobbing kept going, then stopped. Then, clear as day, Logan's voice whispered right behind me, "Dig deeper." I spun around. No one was there. I don't even remember making the decision to run. 1 second I was staring into the trees where I heard that whisper, Logan's whisper, and the next I was sprinting blindly into the dark, branches slapping my face, cold air burning my lungs. My flashlight swung wildly in my hand, beam bouncing off trunks and undergrowth, catching flashes of movement that might have just been shadows, or something else. I didn't care. I had to get away. But no matter how far I ran, the whisper stayed behind me, like it was tethered to my neck. Dig deeper. It wasn't even a voice anymore. It was like a thought that didn't belong to me, like someone else was inside my skull, pressing down from the inside. Eventually I collapsed by a rock face, shaking, my hands bleeding from brambles. I could hear something moving out there, not footsteps, breathing, raspy, guttural, like someone with a collapsed lung dragging their body through the brush. Then I saw the second photo. It was pinned to the base of a tree, barely clinging by a rusty nail. I don't know how I saw it in the dark. Maybe the beam of my flashlight found it by accident. Maybe someone made sure I would. It was another Polaroid. This time it was me. Me sleeping in my tent the first night. Mouth open, face relaxed. The timestamp said 2:38 a.m. That meant someone had been inside our camp, feet from me, taking pictures. I threw up, just doubled over and emptied my guts right there. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Just this tight animal noise, like a sob choking on itself. I was still dry heaving when I heard Caleb calling my name. Not yelling, hissing, like he didn't want to be heard. I followed the sound and found him crouched low in a gully, face pale, shirt soaked in sweat. Eric wasn't with him. He ran, Caleb said, back up toward the ridge. Why? I asked, my throat raw. Caleb didn't answer right away, just handed me something. A piece of duct tape, curled and sticky, with blonde hairs stuck to it. Was in my tent, he said quietly, on my pillow. We sat there, not talking, not breathing, until a sound sliced through the silence. A scream. Not Logan's, Eric's. It came from the direction of the ridge, high-pitched, terrified, then cut off mid-breath, like someone had flipped a switch on his throat. Caleb stood up fast, too fast. I grabbed his arm, but he yanked away. We can't just leave him, he snapped. But there was something in his eyes, something cracked. We're not going to save him, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We're going to join him. He froze. And that's when we heard the dragging again. Not from the woods, from above. We looked up, and I swear to God, someone was crawling across the trees, not in them, across them, like they were lying flat on their stomachs, slithering over the branches like a goddamn snake. Just arms and legs stretched, clutching bark, moving silently from limb to limb. I only saw the shape for a second, silhouetted against the half-moon sky. But it was human. Or it used to be. We didn't wait to find out. We didn't care about direction, just ran, slid down a ravine, tore through underbrush, branches ripping our clothes, faces. At some point, I lost Caleb, just turned around and he was gone. And then I was alone, in the dark, until I saw the light. Not a flashlight, not fire, it was a lantern, an old oil lantern, flickering about 50 feet ahead, swinging gently. Someone was holding it. I should have run the other way. Every instinct said no. Every cell in my body screamed run. But I didn't, because just below the lantern was a face I recognized. Logan, standing perfectly still. His eyes were wrong, dead and glassy, like someone had scooped out the person behind them and left the body on autopilot. He opened his mouth, and a voice that wasn't his said, "You're almost there. Just dig a little deeper." I don't remember backing away, but I must have, because the next thing I knew, I tripped over a root and hit the ground hard. My flashlight skittered off somewhere into the brush, the beam spinning like a loose wheel, and the whole forest spun with it. I scrambled back on my elbows, eyes locked on Logan, on whatever the hell that was wearing his skin. He didn't move. He just stood there, holding that lantern like a warning, like a lure. Behind him, the trees looked too black, like the light from the flame couldn't even touch them. Then, slowly, he turned and walked back into the woods. I wanted to get up, I wanted to run, but my legs didn't work. I just lay there, heart jackhammering in my chest, waiting for something, anything, to pounce. It didn't. Instead, I heard digging, not far, maybe 20, 30 feet away. The soft crunch of metal biting into dirt. The steady, unhurried rhythm of a shovel turning over earth. Someone was digging another hole. I crawled toward the sound, belly to the ground like a soldier in a war movie. Every branch under me sounded like a firecracker. Every breath felt like a scream. And then I saw him. Not Logan, not Eric, not Caleb. Some other man, or what was left of one. He was emaciated, shirtless, skin grey under the moonlight. His back was crisscrossed with scars, some old, some raw, and his hands looked like they'd been broken a dozen times and healed wrong. He dug like a machine, like the shovel was part of his body. The hole was already deep, too deep, as if he'd been digging it for years. But the worst part wasn't the man, it was the bodies, piled beside the hole. At least 5, maybe 6. Some decomposed, others fresh, one still twitching. One had a green REI tag still clinging to a boot. Hikers, campers, people like us. I covered my mouth before I could scream, before the bile could rise. Then the man stopped. He didn't turn. He didn't speak. He just lifted his head, like he could smell me, and said, in a rasp that sounded like it came from somewhere far, far away, "You shouldn't have found this place." I ran. I don't even remember getting up. I just ran. And the woods came alive. Twigs snapped behind me. Heavy footsteps. Not just one person, multiple. The sound of breathing, laughing, cackling, like a pack of animals chasing their prey. I dodged through trees, jumped over logs, ducked under low branches that clawed at my face like fingers. I could hear them behind me, closer, closing in. Then, just when I thought I couldn't go any farther, I stumbled into the clearing. Our camp, or what was left of it. The tents were shredded, our gear scattered. The fire was dead, but something else burned there now. A figure. Standing, Caleb, covered in blood. He looked at me and I saw it in his eyes. He was gone. Whatever we'd disturbed, whatever we'd dug up, it had him now. He smiled, slow, crooked, and said, "We're the roots now." I didn't stay to ask what the hell that meant. I grabbed what I could, a half-charged flashlight, a flare, my pack, and ran. Again, through the brush, across the creek, down into the valley. I kept moving until the sun rose. I didn't sleep. I didn't stop. And I never looked back. I made it out. At least my body did. Somewhere around mid-morning, I stumbled onto a fire road, collapsed in front of a pickup driven by some old dude hauling timber. I must have looked like hell, covered in blood, my shirt torn, face scratched to shit. He jumped out thinking I'd been mauled by a bear. I didn't correct him. How do you even explain something like that? He drove me 2 hours to the nearest ranger station. They called the sheriff. I told them bits and pieces, just enough to not sound completely insane. Missing hikers, a camp gone wrong, something about being stalked. They launched a search team. They found the campsite. They didn't find Caleb, or Eric, or Logan. They didn't find the photos, or the box. They did find the fire pit we dug up. But according to them, it was empty. No bones, no box, no Polaroids. Nothing. Just disturbed earth and a few animal tracks. They chalked it up to trauma. Suggested I talk to someone. A therapist. PTSD. Panic-induced hallucinations. I nodded. I let them believe it. Because the truth is worse. I know what I saw. I know what we unearthed. Something not ancient, not paranormal, just human. Something made by the rot in men, a cycle of horror that's been festering in those woods for decades, maybe longer. Something passed down, taught, a ritual. I still have nightmares. Every time I close my eyes, I see that fucking photo of me sleeping. I wake up and check all the locks. I haven't camped since. I never will. But the worst part, I got a letter last week. No return address, just a photo inside. Another Polaroid. A new one. It's me again. Taken through the window of my apartment. At night. I don't know when. I don't know how. And scribbled on the back in that same blocky handwriting, you didn't dig deep enough.